North Korea now delivered on its threat as they conducted a second nuclear test. And this one, of course, an underground test, and measured on the Richter scale, the whole deal. The White House is outraged. The world is outraged. And joining us right now is Ted Galen Carpenter, Vice President for Defense and Foreign Policy Studies at the Cato Institute. Hey, Ted, how are you, sir?
Yeah, good morning, Steve.
Well, here we go again with North Korea. What are the implications here? What does it mean? I mean, we're told on one hand usually that, nothing they ever do works out well as far as the rockets they fire or test, and this guy's a madman. He's just looking for attention. His people are starving. He just wants food. What does this second test in just about less than 2 months mean?
I think it's further confirmation that North Korea has been stalling for time all along with the six-party talks, that the regime's intention is to have North Korea become a full-blown nuclear weapons state. And the conventional wisdom that the North has simply been using its nuclear program as a bargaining chip to get more concessions from the United States and the other countries involved in the six-party talks, I think has been wrong from the very beginning. And this is further evidence that the North has no intention of giving up its nuclear program, no matter what the offer might be.
So here's a madman who was looking to become a nuclear power, and just how encouraged. I mean, I know they say they were going to do this, and they did it, and supposedly it's because he didn't like the UN's reaction to the first test. But what about Barack Obama's reaction or lack thereof after the first test? I mean, basically he said, okay, we warned you not to do this, so when do you want to start the talks again? I mean, there was absolutely really nothing in the way from the United States in the way of any kind of punishment or even anything really too harsh. Was that did that make this next test more likely to occur as it has, or did it not influence anything at all?
Well, let me say, first of all, I don't think Kim Jong-il is a madman. Let's not confuse ruthlessness with insanity. He's a bit eccentric, but the North Korean regime is fairly consistent in what it tries to pursue. With regard to the U.S. and UN reaction, President Obama, I thought, was rather naive following the missile test when he thought that the United Nations Security Council would actually take meaningful action against North Korea. That was never in the cards, given the attitude of both China and Russia. There was no possibility of getting any kind of serious sanctions resolution out of the Council. And what the Council did was issue a totally anemic, toothless statement condemning the North Korean attack. The North Korean test, but taking no further action. Pyongyang then used that as an excuse to break off the six-party talks and now to conduct the nuclear test. So I'm not sure that anything short of rigorous economic sanctions, which would take require China to be a big participant, or military action, which is far, far too dangerous, would dissuade North Korea from the course that it's on.
All right, so let's move on. We're talking to Ted Galen Carpenter, Vice President of Defense and Foreign Policy Issues at the Cato Institute. Steve Malzberg here in for John on the John Gambling Show. Let's move on to Iran, who, of course, last week tested a missile late last week, which was successful. We were told that by our own defense secretary. They now have the capability of hitting all over in Israel, hitting our bases all over the Mideast, hitting parts of Europe. And again, Barack Obama wants to be friends with them. And report after report after report, one in the Jerusalem Post over the weekend, indicates what some of us have been saying all along, that this administration, our administration, has already conceded amongst themselves and basically to Israel that, hey, we're going to live with a nuclear Iran, and that's just the way it's going to be. Do you believe that that's what this administration is going to settle for?
The underlying reality is probably that we're going to end up living with both a nuclear Iran and a nuclear North Korea. almost nobody in the U.S. government or any of the NATO governments has the stomach for taking military action against Iran to try to prevent it from eventually beginning to build a nuclear arsenal. They regard that, as the case of North Korea, as just much, much too dangerous. Without that kind of military response, it's highly probable that Iran will eventually emerge as a nuclear power. Again, that's uncomfortable, but we shouldn't panic about that, because deterrence still works, and Iran is going to be many, many years away from having a serious arsenal and a serious delivery system. So
well,
this is not something that we have to take action right this moment.
Well, doesn't the missile test indicate that they have a delivery system? And haven't there been conflicting reports now for years that they're a year away, 2 years away, or that they even have maybe one already? I mean, it sounds like you're pretty much saying that there's no problem. And is there a difference in the leadership? I mean, Ahmadinejad and the Ayatollahs of Iran seem to have this, as far as mutually assured destruction goes, they don't really care, because I'm of the belief, and so are many, many others, that some there, including the aforementioned Ayatollah and Ahmadinejad, they believe that their religious prophecy will be fulfilled with Armageddon, and they'll go to heaven, and that's the best they could hope for is Armageddon. So, because their missing imam comes back, or whatever the heck that prophecy is. So, we're not dealing with rational people here at all.
Well, first of all, a missile test means you're still a long way from having a reliable fleet of missiles. Again, that's a process that takes a good many years. Secondly, although the conventional wisdom is that the Iranian leadership is irrational, Iran's actions in the past have suggested rational calculation, not insanity. For instance, in the war against Iraq in the 1980s, the Ayatollah Khomeini said that Iran would never, ever conclude peace with Saddam Hussein. When his generals told him that the war would go on for at least 5 years beyond the point they were at, with no guarantee of victory, he signed a peace treaty. That's a rational action. That's not insanity. And we've heard this. We're dealing with totally irrational leaders before. We did it with China during the Mao era, Mao Zedong and his people. They issued absolutely blood-curdling statements about how they would win nuclear wars against the United States. And there were people who wanted airstrikes to take out China's nuclear program. Again, we didn't do that. We found out that those fears were overblown. Iran's government, obviously, is a rather repulsive lot. But let's not absolutely panic and assume that deterrence does not work, because the alternative to that is to launch attacks that could literally put the whole region aflame.
All right, Ted, I appreciate your time, sir. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Appreciate you coming on. Ted Galen Carpenter, Vice President for Defense and Foreign Policy Studies at the Cato Institute.